With another Winds of Winterless year coming to an end, I figured it was time to reassess the George R. R. Martin situation and provide a definitive answer once and for all. Will we ever get Winds of Winter in any form? We can go even further and answer, will we ever get a proper conclusion to George's Song of Ice and Fire series? Well, I have the answer, and I didn't just pull it out of my butthole where I keep most of my opinions. For this, I have the receipts. Yes, after examining the evidence, George's words and actions, or lack of action, over the years, including more recent concerning comments, and drawing on my own experience as a writer and editor, I have some bad but not unexpected news. There is a 99.785213% chance we'll never get Winds of Winter. Okay, so I did pull that number out of my butthole. It is where I keep my numbers after all. But my point is, it's a solid no from me. Here's why.
No fluff writing advice. Cut the fluff!
Georgie Porgy Pudding and Pie stopped writing his super popular series and made his fans cry. True story. Alright, let's get into the nitty gritty. First, I'll outline the evidence that points to Georgie never finishing Winds of Winter, or what I call the timeline of lies. Then, I'll explain why this means we'll never get the book. Finally, I'll discuss what the hell we can do about it. Do authors owe their fans anything? Now, that's a controversial question I'll unpack at the end. Alright, first things first, the evidence, the timeline of lies. George R. R. Martin didn't start writing Winds of Winter after the release of his last novel, no, A Dance of Dragons. He started writing it before that. As he mentions in a 2010 blog, he moved 2 chapters from A Dance of Dragons to Winds of Winter. So he started the writing process 15 years ago with a 2 chapter head start. In 2011, he predicted it would take him 3 years to finish Winds of Winter. I mean, for an experienced full-time writer with a big editing team, that's already a concerning prediction. It's not like he's not capable of putting words on the page at a reasonable pace. Believe it or not, there were only 2 year gaps between his first 3 books, but then he got rich, all right? He got filthy fucking rich. Is it any coincidence he stopped writing just as the Game of Thrones TV series took off and he lined his pockets and his pantry with the spoils of that success? I think not. Now, should we go through all of Georgie Boy's broken promises over the years? Yes, we should. In his own words in 2016, I am not writing anything until I deliver Winds of Winter. Teleplays, screenplays, short stories, introductions, forwards, nothing. So, how did that work out? In 2017, George R. informed fans, I think it will be out this year, but hey, I thought the same thing last year. Another broken promise, but hey, at least there's some self awareness starting to develop, which I believe has developed even more in recent years. We'll get there. In 2018, we got another promising update. That is, another blatant lie. Work on Winds of Winter continues and remains my top priority. It is ridiculous to think otherwise. Continues. Someone needs to explain to George the definition of continues. And ridiculous? Oh, he's just gaslighting at this point. How ridiculous is it now in 2025, George? I'll tell you what's ridiculous. In 2019, this is where it really gets sad. Martin said, if I don't have the Winds of Winter in my hand when I arrive in New Zealand for Worldcon, you have my formal written permission to imprison me in a small cabin on White Island overlooking that lake of sulfuric acid until I'm done. Does that count as legal consent? Here's where we went wrong, people. We didn't follow through on his request. Imprison this man near acid right now. At this point, I don't even think that would help. Let's skip a few more of these broken promises. There are so many to get through. To 2020, when Georgie Porgy announced he was 3/4 done.
I think I'm about 3/4 of the way done, maybe, but that's not 100% done, so I have to continue to work on it.
No, it's not 100%, is it? I want to talk about this statement a bit more because it's crucial to my conclusion. But before I do, let's look at one more recent damning statement. It's practically an admission of guilt. But that's still a priority. A lot of people are already writing obituaries for me. They're saying, oh, he'll never be finished. Maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm alive right now. I seem pretty vital. Yes, George Pretty Vital Martin finally admitted fans might be right. Winds of Winter may never exist. And I think he's right. Let's go back to the statement that he's 3/4 done. Now, anyone who's ever done anything ever knows that once you hit the home stretch, unless you're on the brink of death, which Martin may very well be, that's when you feel most motivated. You're running a marathon and the finish line's in sight. Do you just stop? No, you push through to the final stage and claim your victory. The fact that Martin hasn't just powered through tells me he doesn't want to finish. Now, why wouldn't he want to finish the book he's been dragging out for over a decade? Because if he finishes, then the whole fiasco starts again with the final book of the series, A Taste of Spring, or whatever it's called, a dash of spring, a sprinkling of spring, doesn't matter, because that book will never exist, 100%. My point is, if some external force was stopping George from finishing his book, he could just sort it out and get the work done. But because it genuinely looks like he doesn't want to finish Winds of Winter, like he's just running down the clock, it can't ever exist. I'm sorry to say. He could have asked for help, brought in another writer who understands his vision, but no, he's running down the clock, so it's no longer his problem anymore, on account of him no longer existing. So, what's the solution? Good question. Should someone else finish the series when Martin's clock does finally run out? According to George himself, no. He doesn't want anyone else getting their grubby little fingers on his unfinished series, which pretty much means it won't happen. Knowing his dying wish is that no one finishes his series, what sane author or publisher would deny that wish? It'd be a PR disaster, a no-win situation. Even if the chosen author managed to pull it off, they'd forever be the person who defecated on George's dying wish. And if they mess it up, then they've defecated on the entire series and Martin's admittedly incomplete legacy. It just won't happen. And to everyone saying Brandon Sanderson should finish A Song of Ice and Fire, have you read Sanderson's or Martin's work? They're completely different writers. Sanderson is utterly incapable of writing a Song of Ice and Fire book. Nothing against Sando, but it's not his style at all. Funnily, in his later years, George R.R. Martin himself seems utterly incapable of writing a Song of Ice and Fire book, so at least they have that in common. Okay, the final big question. Does George R.R. Martin owe us Winds of Winter? Does he owe us a complete series? Yes and no. Wow, great answer. Look, while I believe Martin and other authors do owe fans some goddamn honesty, just say you're not finishing the series so we can all move on with our lives. We don't own authors or any content creators. If George R.R. Martin wants to spend his final days not writing Winds of Winter, so be it. With that said, he needs to be prepared to face the consequences of that decision. Fans will continue to call him fat, lazy, old, nearly dead. They do that, you know. Martin himself often repeats it. Now, morally, refusing to finish your series that has or had a loyal fan base is a dick move. No, we shouldn't lock George away until he finishes his series, but he also needs to understand why fans or former fans are so demoralised they're asking Brandon Sanderson, of all people, to intervene. Ultimately, it's time we all accept that the entire series is a write-off and move on with our lives. That's what I'm doing. Unless something wild happens, this will be the last George R.R. Martin video I make. If I do make any more, I should be locked in a cabin surrounded by acid. Seems to be the go-to move. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy this video, hit subscribe anyway and hate watch my content. That's always fun.